Hello and welcome to the channel, or welcome back if you are so inclined. In today's video, we're taking a look at these. It's the E910 Wireless from EKSA. Now these things weigh around 250 grams and come in for around 65 US. They're also sporting a 5.8 GHz wireless connection for reasons. But anyway, let's take a look. So let's get straight in and check out the mic of the E910 Wireless. Now this is a fairly cheap headset, so I'm not expecting miracles from it, but it's not as bad as I thought. Now, as you can hear, there is quite a bit of a nasal tone to it, and it is a bit choppy at times. And if I do start to throw out a lot of P's and shh, you'll hear quite a lot of distortion to it, which is kind of expected on a cheaper headset. And it doesn't give any big marketing plaudits about its microphone either. But anyway, let's get on with the new methodology. So I'll just read the blurb from the box. We get low latency, about 15 milliseconds. I love that it says about. That's very, very technical. It's nice that they're mentioning latency on a wireless headset. We tend to not get that information, but honestly, I couldn't tell any difference between me and the machine. It was probably a little bit, there was definitely less latency than Bluetooth. Let's put it that way. You get more than 10 hours of playtime. Now, I got about 8 hours, but I was playing on around 85% volume. So I'm guessing they've done the test at around 70%. So that kind of lines up. So I won't mock anything with that. ENC, by the way, it's much like ANC, except the E means environmental noise cancelling. Now, the padding alone of this headset does sort of dull out a lot of those background environmental sounds. So again, I won't take that away from it. It's not something that I'd market. It's just more of a consequence of the design as opposed to a deliberate thought, I would suspect. And it has 7.1 surround for better FPS gaming. Now, the 7.1, you do need to download software from the EKSA website. It's all very easy. You just go to the support section, put in the model number of your headset and download the software. It's much like all others. The 7.1 is really bad. Definitely don't use it. And you can change the EQ a bit to try and get a bit more, but we'll come on more to that when we get onto the audio test itself. But there you are. The mic is okay, but do let me know in the comments below if you think any different. Let's move on. Now, in terms of the audio with this headset, it's gone down the route that most sort of, I don't want to say budget, but definitely on the cheaper end of headphones and headsets go, where it's definitely got the tuning weighted more towards the bass end, which isn't too bad. There's a lot of clarity, but it does feel a bit muddy, and all the brightness that you'd normally get seems to have just gone. It seems to be ignored, which kind of makes me feel that the drivers themselves were not particularly capable of those bright sounds, so they have tuned it more towards the bass, which does, like I say, muddy the rest of it. Now, in terms of headsets for around this price range, or headphones for around this price range, it's pretty much spot on to where they are. They've done nothing different. They've done nothing that separates them out from the rest, but it does sound pretty good. In FPS games, you did get decent enough spatial awareness. You could hear footsteps. The only problem with the footsteps were, if there was explosions at the same time, the explosion, or the bass from that explosion, would completely dominate the sound, making everything else fairly silent, which was quite difficult. Now, within the software itself, you could go in there and just reduce some of the bass a little bit. However, it was already pulled down quite a lot, and just try and increase the treble, which gets a bit fatiguing on the ears after a while, just to kind of account for that. But ultimately, I like bass, but I like controlled bass. I like brightness still to be there. That's all the tones of the footsteps and things like that, and that's the bit that I want, and it does pull away from that somewhat. Now, if you're listening to bass music, or if you like bass heavy, then these are definitely good for you. I wouldn't take that away. When I was listening to anything bass boosted, it held it quite well, and did seem to control it at about 90% volume. Anything after that, you got a lot of distortion. But as I mentioned, the brightness just seems to have been ignored completely with these, sadly. But they're okay. They were good for FPS games, they were good for racing games. I got nice, like I said, spatial awareness, especially with engine sounds. Things like that all sounded pretty good on this, so I don't want to take that away from it. And in single player games, yeah, it was okay. It wasn't the best, again, just because it was too heavily weighted towards the bass. And when you're watching movies, that seemed to sort it out somewhat. It seemed to be better leveled when you're using sort of dynamic home theater as your audio setting, just to really pull that range out, because it doesn't like things that are quite compressed. That's the one thing I can say about this headset. It's good for bassy music, not too great for everything else. For gaming, it's more than passable. I don't want to take that away from it. Again, at the price, that's the one thing you have to remember with this. At the price, the sound is okay. Once you start getting up to the level of like Beyerdynamics, there's no comparison there, so there's nothing to be done with that. But for what they are, they're pretty good. But there we are. Let's move on. Now, in terms of the build of this headset, it is a predominantly plastic design, which does keep the weight down quite substantially. This thing comes in at around 250 grams, which is nothing on the head itself. But starting at the top, we've got the obligatory embossed logo on the leverette headband, which is all very nice, EKSA, well done. And underneath that, we do have about ½ an inch of padding. And it is quite soft padding, but with the headset weighing not very much, you don't need a great deal there. Coming down from there, we do have the only visible piece of metal on the headset itself, which are these arms that hold the ear cup to the headband itself. Now the housing for the arms doesn't feel like that's metal. It sounds very plasticky, and it's quite a difficult thing to do to get these sized right. And if you have this slightly off axis, you can't move it whatsoever. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I found that once I got these to the side for my head, the chances of that changing were minimal. The moment you move it a little bit, it seems to just lock into place, which is really quite nice, to be honest. Now, the ear cups themselves do have a full inch of padding around them, which is all very nice. Now, these were comfortable, but I did get a little bit of heat buildup, and the amount of padding that's there is understandable given that there's nothing on the inside to cover the driver housing. There's no padding whatsoever over this red cloth with the letters in to indicate which ear, which is all very nice. But there is a slight protrusion from the middle of the driver housing, which did start to press into the centre of my ear after a good 4 hours. But up until that point, they were very, very comfortable, so I'll give them that. The light weight plus the generous amount of cushioning all kept this very comfortable and stable on my head. Now, the right ear cup has no controls on it whatsoever, which I like. That's my trigger finger, so I enjoy that hand being free. All of the action does take place on the left ear cup. Now, I have to point out, I am a big fan of the high contrast markings on the headset itself. When it was dark, I could still see exactly what these markings were. And we do have a Type-C charging port for fast charging. Hooray for Type-C, I'll keep saying it until it's the norm and we've got rid of micro-B altogether. And it's just as well that these do have fast charging, because the battery life on these does say on the box more than 10 hours at 70% volume. I played around 80% and I got around 7 to 8 hours, so that kind of makes sense, and it's a definite good job that they do have fast charging for that. Coming up from there, we do have the power button. Again, it's just a standard depression switch. You just hold it until the light turns on and you're good to go. Next to there, we do have the mute button. It's just a depression switch again, and you do get a voice in your ear just to let you know if you're muted or unmuted. Next to that, we have the volume control. Now, the volume wheel itself doesn't protrude a great deal, and it's kind of difficult to find sometimes, but there is quite a lot of play with it. You can be quite accurate with the volume itself, but the wheel does feel that it's constructed a bit on the cheaper side, shall we say. But then this is not an expensive headset. We also have the retractable microphone. All very lovely. It's about 3 inches long, doesn't have an LED on the edge of it, and when you are wearing these, it takes up absolutely no peripheral vision. The amount of times I'm checking just to make sure that I don't have the microphone retracted, but it doesn't. It's very nice. In terms of comfort, as I mentioned, these are quite comfortable, especially at first. The first few hours, you don't really notice you're wearing them. The lightweight plus the generous amount of padding, all very, very good. But as I said, after a couple of hours, these do start to sink in. You do start to feel a bit of sort of tightness on the ears with the warmth. That's probably the best way I can describe that for you. But anyway, let's move on. So what do we get in the box of the EKSA E910 Wireless gaming headset? Well, it's fairly standard stuff, if we're being perfectly frank. We get the user manual, which is several different languages from Europe: English, French, Italian and German, to be precise. If you speak all of those, well done. We also get the 3.5mm jack, all very lovely. We get the Type-C charging cable. Well done, EKSA, and it comes with its own cable tie, which I actually really like when companies do that. They don't necessarily need to put their own branding on, but I like it when they do. That's very, very lovely. We get the carry case, which is kind of a very firm feeling leather type material, and it is quite nice. It feels a bit rigid, but the drawstrings, I noticed when I tried to pull these, it's almost impossible to get them all the way pulled in, but you can get there with the required amount of strength. And it does have the EKSA logo emblazoned on the front. It's nicely embossed into this sort of leatherette material. Then we get this, the 5.8 GHz wireless receiver. Now this is a bit of a big boy. Not gonna lie, I have my computer under my desk, and the amount of times I nearly just hit this with my knee and snapped it off. But that's pretty much it. It annoys me that it's so big. It is a 5.8 GHz wireless receiver, which is pretty, well, it's better for shorter ranges. Pretty much that's all you get from 5.8 to 2.4, but no real noticeable difference in terms of the audible difference. You can't really hear any of that, but the dongle is rather big. I would rather EKSA make this a bit smaller, because this would be a perfect on-the-go sort of pair of headphones. Not overly expensive, very light, but this, if you had to plug that into the side of your laptop, it's going to be a bit large. That's all I'm saying with that, but it's fairly standard what we get in the box with the EKSA E910. But there we are, let's move on. Now, in terms of compatibility for this headset, it does say on the box that it's compatible with Windows 7, 8, 10, PC, not sure why it's a PC after Windows. We've also got Xbox One, PS4, PS5, Nintendo Switch, laptop, Mac, macOS and TV. Not all of that is wireless compatibility. There's no regulation that says it has to be advertised that way. From my testing, I found that it was wirelessly compatible with PC, that's pretty much it. Everything else, if you can use the 3.5mm cable jack, then that's perfect for you. This will be compatible with any controller that has a 3.5mm aux cable, and any device that will. You will get audio through these, and you can use the mic should it be a two-way connector there as well. But not massively compatible. It's the standard PC stuff where it's compatible with PC wirelessly and everything else has to be wired in. Now, in conclusion, with this headset, would I recommend purchasing this? It is around 65 USD. I mean, right now on the EKSA website, this is 85 USD, reduced from 120. I can tell you it's not worth that amount of money. It's definitely not. At that price range, you're definitely looking at things like, I don't know, a Razer, Black Shark, something along those lines, or the Axis One wireless is around that price range now, so I couldn't possibly recommend this over that. If this came in at around 45 quid, then yes, potentially it'd be a really good bargain if you were getting a wireless headset and that's what you wanted. But at the price range that it's at, I think it's competing at a level that's not necessarily where it should be at just yet. Now, I have every confidence that EKSA will improve. I've not heard of the brand before they sent this out to me, and I kind of like it. They're on the right track, so kudos to that. But overall, right now, for the asking price, especially the MSRP, definitely not. I wouldn't recommend it for that price. If you can pick these up for around 60 USD, then yeah, why not go for it? I know they're on AliExpress. But there we are. It's an okay headset. I don't want to take anything away from it. I want to thank EKSA for sending this out for me to review. Kudos to that. I'm sorry if you wanted it to be more glamourifying for you, but honesty is everything in this game. It's as simple as that. But thank you very much for watching, everyone. I do hope you liked the video. If so, please leave a thumbs up. If you watched to the end as a hate viewer, again, lovely to see you. Nice to have you back. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, everyone. The link to this will be in the description below. It's not an affiliate link. It's one that EKSA sent over, so I don't need to give all the blurb with that. But yeah, have a nice evening, morning, noon, wherever you are in the world. Goodbye.